Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day as we finish the 17th week of Ordinary Time and prepare ourselves for this coming Sunday. Let us be open to your call in service to you, and let us always be filled with the Spirit that leads us to come to know you more and more each and every day. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is the 17th week of Ordinary Time, Friday, and it is, as I said, the last working day normal prior to Sunday. And we all know that, but it's also the memorial of Saint John Mary Vianney, priest. Now, oftentimes I spell it John, Jean, because, of course, that's John in French. He was French, and he lived in the 19th century, the early to mid-19th century in France. He actually... He worked in a place called Ars, France, and therefore he's known as the, I'm not going to pronounce this well in French, Curé des Ars, meaning he is the priest of Ars. He is very famous for, along with Padre Pio, as being people who spent long times in the confessional to hear and to give people absolution for their sins. And he is also someone who people traveled long distances in order to go to confession to them. And he was known for something called reading souls. Both Padre Pio and St. John Vianney could actually tell if a person had not confessed certain sins, and would tell them, you have more sins to confess. And so it was a fascinating story of who he was, Saint John Mary Vianney. And he is also the patron saint of parish priests. So he's an important person in the life of the church. He's an important person in the life of priests. Every year around this time, and we're doing it again this year, the cardinal hosts a cookout for parish priests in celebration of their service to the church. And this is happening around this time as well. So we know the importance of this particular day. The importance is celebrating Saint John Vianney. He had a style of preaching to his parishioners every single Sunday, which were actually a small group, relatively thinking. He never ran anything that we would call a mega church. As a matter of fact, I think he had roughly 250 people going to Mass on Sundays. So fascinating that he was very strong in his preaching to this relatively small group. And one of the things he would preach is that he warned against something that the book of Revelation warns against, and that is lukewarm Catholicism. And what he called the lukewarm were the people who could live their faith. They never went to church, but they felt they were good enough to get to heaven. That's actually one of the things that I rail against as well, because what that means is our way to get to heaven is through doing good things. Well, I know there are evangelicals listening right now that may not agree fully with what Catholic teaching is, but they may shiver at that thought, because what is that? That's salvation by works, and we are not saved by works. In other words, we can't earn our way to heaven. We can't say, well, if we do all these good things, then we can get to heaven. And one of the great symbols that I use of that is Charlie the Tuna from Starkist. Because what does he say? I want to show Starkist Tuna that I have good taste. Because he always has, these great pieces of art around him. No. Starkist, this is not a paid endorsement, by the way. It just happens to be me using this as an example. Although Starkist tuna is fine. So is Bumblebee and so are the rest. But anyway, he says, I want to show Starkist that I have good taste. And the response is, Charlie, Starkist is not looking for tuna with good taste. It's looking for tuna that tastes good. Well, that same thing is an idea. It's like people trying to show God, see, I'm doing good things for you. I'm doing good things. But we really have to understand is that friendship with Christ is that deepening of our experience with Christ. So it's not about doing good things. It's about knowing Christ. And because we know Christ, we do good things. That's a whole different idea. And it's very similar in a concept as Charlie Tuna's situation. They're not looking for tuna that, Starkist is not looking for tuna that has good taste, but tuna that tastes good. And St. John Vianney recognized that. He said that the importance of going to Mass. And we're going to talk more about this on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from Allston, Massachusetts. Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WEZE 590 AM and WEZEradio.com at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us on our parish website, ST for StAnthonyAlston.org. That's StAnthonyAlston.org. And let others know where they can find us and spread the word and subscribe to our podcast. And also know that we are here every single Monday through Friday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We are also, as you heard, at the website, and you can also come to our Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock a.m. So come experience that at 43 Holton Street in Allston, Massachusetts. So anyway, we're talking about this powerful teaching by St. John Vianney. So he believed that the most worldly of persons who rejects God and everything else had a greater chance of going to heaven than the person who was what he called lukewarm. They didn't go to church. They believed that if they just did good things, they could get to heaven. They felt that they were good enough to get to heaven. And he says all of that is a false security, because it leads people to believe truths about themselves that are not true. So these were powerful teachings by him. So really, if you ever see someone who is completely worldly and kind of mocks your faith and everything else, understand that St. John Vianney had more hope for them than the lukewarm Catholic. So it should show you the importance of not being a lukewarm Catholic. And that's why going to church is so important. But also, as I always teach, and he did too, the importance of prayer. Now, one of the things he taught, which I also teach, is the importance of living our faith. How we live our faith is how we preach the gospel. That's important. And even just going to church on Sunday, I tell my parishioners all the time, I said, there are people who are reading the sports page, however they're reading it, whether on a real newspaper or on an e-newspaper, and they're seeing the Catholics go to church on Sunday and asking the question, why are they going to church on Sunday? What's so important that they go on Sunday to this church? And that's an important understanding, that you're simply going to church is preaching the word. But when you are living your faith, that's a way of preaching the word. And one of the problems we're having in our church is we've got all these people who claim to be teaching the faith, and they're attacking others, or they're just speaking out. There was an interesting thing that happened where it was actually with Pints with Aquinas. And there was a guest on there, a Father Charles Robinson. And he was saying something that you often see on Pints with Aquinas, this, standing up and, standing up against evil or whatever. And he's saying how we must not, there is no virtue of tolerance. Well, okay, let me explain something to you. The way we preach the gospel is by living our faith. That's how we do it. And through our faith, doing the acts the gospel calls us to do, which are acts of goodness. There is an important teaching from St. Paul, fight evil by doing good. And Father Jerzy Populusco said exactly the same thing. So all these people who are standing up and saying, we have to fight against evil, we have to fight against evil, you can be an atheist and do that. And always know that's a warning sign I always give. If you can be an atheist and do something, then you're not actually living what the Catholics are called to live. We're called to live the gospel. And this is something that St. John Vianney was very strong on. So be careful of these culture warriors who are out there saying you have to stand up against these new trends, you have to, whatever. What we really have to do is seek the gospel, because if you do stand up, and this happens a lot, is stand up against these new trends or these new ideas or whatever, and you're not living the gospel, that's a great deception to fall into. And that leads you right down the path of a lukewarm form of Catholicism, or any form of Christianity, by the way. And what we need to do is be people of prayer and allow the Lord to work through us. And as people of prayer, we can live the gospel. And always know that there will be a smaller group of people doing that than the larger group that are always out fighting evil when they're not living the gospel. So keep that in mind and know that, and, come to be aware of that as you celebrate this feast day memorial of St. John Vianney. Have a blessed weekend. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.